That's pretty smooth. I like that. Let's go. Welcome, everybody. Where are you chiming in from? If you're chiming in from YouTube, welcome. Wherever you are in the world. If you're on the call with me right now, welcome. Good to be with you. All right, we're going to get this party started, guys. Excited to be with you today. It's Monday night, September 9th, man. Look at that. September 9th is already, man, I remember doing these calls in January and ready to rock with 2024. And I'm like, man, the third quarter is almost done. We're coming into the last quarter of the year. And it flies so quickly, guys. So if you're not taking advantage of the things that we talk about in these webinars and these sessions, these live streams, or anytime that we get together, I encourage you, I invite you to consider applying all these principles everywhere that you are, because time waits for no one. It moves by fast. And if you don't take advantage of now, then you and I will miss out if we don't take advantage of now, is what I want to say. So, guys, let's get into this right now, really quickly. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So just to recap real quick, this is me, Cheston Bulgin with Buy the Books Consulting, CFO and tax strategist, your accounting superhero. And this is how you reach us, 888-4BTB now. That's 888-428-2669. And you can always reach us on the web at youraccountingsuperhero.com. You can reach me directly at cbulgin at youraccountingsuperhero.com. And here's why you want to reach out and make sure that you get peace, ease, and clarity in what you do. This is one of the main things that we provide people with, is that peace, ease, and clarity. And that's what we really look to deliver here. I know that we can talk about a lot of complex concepts here when it comes to running your business structure, the financial aspect of it, the systems that you want to put in place inside of the business to help it run, especially in trucking with so many moving parts. It can be a little bit complex, but what we want to do is create ease and clarity and peace out of that complexity, so that you are set up to win, right? You have a real base understanding of what you can do each and every day, simply so that you can produce the results you want to produce in life in this area. All right. So super fantastic that you're here in this conversation today, because we pivoted into the financial literacy aspect of it. And it can be one of those things where it can seem like overly complex. And I don't want it to be overly complex for you. I want it to be simple. I want it to be easy for you. I want you to take all of the information that we share here, make it your own, and run your business like a Fortune 100 company. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Just a little bit of background. We help companies with, especially trucking companies, with the accounting, the bookkeeping aspect of it, QuickBooks and everything, the technology to help you run your business, tax strategy, tax planning, tax compliance, and then fleet advisory and business advisory. That's what we do. And we have this group that you're a part of. For a lot of people that are in this conversation with us, you get access to this conversation through the Truck Profit Academy, and really powerful community that we're building here. And, I was talking with my team today. We want to, there's promises that we have. You may not know about the promises that we give people, but there are promises that we give that we want to honor inside of who we are. And really the promise is that you level up, that you win inside of your trucking company and your trucking business. And we want to do that at 100% level. So if you're in the Truck Profit Academy, that's what we're about. We're about your success 100%. You win, all right, because you're a part of the Truck Profit Academy. And what does winning look like? It could look different ways for you, but essentially it's going to be your profitability. You're going to make more money, right? That's the bottom line. Make more money that you get to keep in your pocket, and do it in a way where you can maintain your sanity. That's the promise. Okay. That's what we're looking to deliver with the Truck Profit Academy and everything that we do. So if you're not a part of this group, you want to get access to this group wherever you're watching it from, you want to be a member. And, just go to get there and get that membership now before it becomes a paid event. We are going to have it be a paid program, paid membership beginning in the 1st of 2025, January 1st, 2025. It's going to be a paid membership program. So guess what? You are in a place right now where you get grandfathered in, and you get to take advantage of all that we have to offer. Guys, we're going to have a mastermind too, a business mastermind, that's going to meet every week. Like a call like this, a Zoom call, but it's really going to be dedicated to making sure that we use the brain trust of you to win in your business, in your trucking company. Okay, so keep an eye out for that too, guys. Truckprofitacademy.com. Go there to get signed up. Also, if you want to stop wasting time and increase your profits and cash flow as soon as today, you want to take advantage of this free profit and cash flow analysis where you get on a call with me directly or somebody on our team. We'll take a look at your scenario specifically at what you've been doing up until now. An extra pair of eyes, especially an extra pair of eyes that have actually seen and experienced a lot of what you go through in the business, could be the one thing, that one thing that could transform everything in your trucking company, in your business, right? That one call, that one thing could be the thing, right? You could take it and run with it. And now you never have to go back. You can actually crush it at levels that you never even imagined before just because you got on one call. That's what this is. You can do that by going to youraccountingsuperhero.com, book-and-appointment. Okay. That's how we get there. All right. So let's go. Let's rock with this, guys. The following is for educational purposes only, is not to be considered financial, accounting, or legal advice. Please consult your tax, accounting, and/or legal professional for specific advice. Now we get to it. All right. This is a powerful conversation we're going to be in today. The theme of today really is to run your business like a Fortune 100. This is what we want. All right. You want to run your business, your trucking company, like a Fortune 100 company. So I'm actually going to put this here. Run it like a Fortune 100. Okay, this is what we want. All right, let me make sure that this gets straightened up so you can see it easily. There we go. Run your trucking company like a Fortune 100. That's what we want for you. And what does that really mean? If you're going to run your company like a Fortune 100, look at some of the major companies that are traded on like a major exchange, publicly traded company, highly successful. Now, if we look at this industry in general, in terms of, companies that do well, what I'm processing right now, JB Hunt, what are those companies that interest me when I think about trucking and logistics? They didn't start from much in the 80s and didn't have any industry experience, nothing, didn't really know anything about trucking at all. But then they turned this organization into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, right, over the time that they've been in here, and they did it relatively quickly. And why? Because they had simple principles in place. One, overall, they were looking at being innovative and looking at the entire system of their business model, focused on the systems. What is it that they can bridge in terms of systems? So basically, like if they don't have the structures in place to deliver the outcome, well, they were looking to put those structures in. They could see that, they could pivot, and they could look and see, okay, what was missing in terms of that. And that was the primary focus. How do we systemize, like the entire industry, really, as a whole, right? And they started putting those systems in place on a business level, and off to the races they ran. And, they haven't turned back ever since. Now, with that comes protocols and procedures and simple understanding of different components of your business units, like business model, really, business model. All right, so how do we understand that? Well, we're starting this conversation about financial literacy. And the thing that I want you to get inside of this is that the numbers really do give you access to what there is to take advantage of inside of your business. So where it is that you actually have been missing opportunities, like you've been missing out because you've been taking action in areas that maybe you shouldn't have, versus other areas in your business in which you probably should have taken advantage of. You wouldn't know this unless you were actually reading the number story and understanding, like basically, like out here in the open, what it is in reality that you can look at, okay, rather than it being inside of your head. All right, so we want to bring it out of your head and put it out in front of us where you can actually see it objectively and make really clear decisions. So this is what financial literacy brings to the table. Your ability to read numbers, first, your ability to track it in a way where you can put it out here in numeric terms, bring it out into numeric terms. So then we understand what those numbers mean, and then we make powerful choices. All right, so when we're talking about running it like a Fortune 100 company, it means that you are really making database decisions to improve your structures and systems in your business, which really deliver you decisions that you can make consistently and reliably every single day to win every single day, like over and over and over again, like clockwork. And then you have a business that actually prints money for you. Okay, a business that's very scalable, a business that we call, if you ever read Robert Kiyosaki, one of my favorite books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, way back when I first read it, was like amazing to me that all these principles existed that just made sense to me. And what really made sense to me was, that he has a cash flow quadrant. So that B quadrant, Made a whole lot of sense to me. What does a B quadrant look like? Well, B quadrant looks like a business that runs outside of your direct efforts. Now, I don't know how many of you like are inside the trucking industry listening today, where you're just, you're grinding it out each and every day, working, putting boot to the pavement, putting out fires, making sure that your guys have what they need, making sure that you have what you need. If you're an owner operator, you're out there driving and everything, and you're working your tail off, right, inside of the business. But what would it look like if that business could run without your direct effort? It could just keep running outside of you and do what it does outside of you and keeps growing like its own being, as if it were alive, breathing and moving on its own and growing on its own. And it becomes a true legacy outside of you that exists out here in the real life. Okay, without your influence directly, right? That's what it looked to me, that's really winning inside of your business, is to be able to build something that does that. It's really giving birth to something that lives and breathes on its own, that produces you freedom, wealth, and legacy. Okay, so that's what's available through running it like a Fortune 100 company. And I want you to do that with your trucking company. Put that CEO hat on for most of your day. And I get it, man. There's so many things that you have to address throughout the day because of the stages that you're in, right? But the whole idea is to keep moving, progressing toward the intention of having this business operate without you. All right, so that's the CEO hat that's running in like a Fortune 100 company, and we get direct access to doing that through understanding financial literacy, right? And so we're going to talk about one of the main things in financial literacy. One of the main financial reports is going to be the income statement, okay? And we're going to talk about this today from a financial reporting perspective. Okay, so just reading that number, because there are two ways to read this. Number one, we talk about, financial, like talk about reading the numbers, financial literacy. I don't know how well you guys can see this because my screen might be a little small because I'm sharing my PowerPoint. But if you can see it, I'm just going to put it out here for us to come back to later on in this conversation. But number one is going to be, financial reporting. And there's going to be number two, managerial management reporting. I'm just going to call it management reporting. Okay, so number one, we're going to talk about financial reporting today. And the financial reporting aspect of it, I talked about it on the other call. This is about really getting a quick synopsis of the overall health and performance of your business, okay? This is something that you could provide to lenders and your tax people and investors when they want to get an understanding of whether or not you're a safe investment or you're safe to give a loan to, or whether or not, when you have taxes to pay or not, okay? So this is what the financial reporting aspect of it is, and it really gives you access. If you're an owner, it gives you that quick access to understanding, okay, well, how are we doing and what's impacting what we're doing fairly quickly so that we know where to drill in and get more information. Okay, so let's talk about income statements. So what we're looking at here on this PowerPoint is how to read an income statement from top to bottom. We call it top line to bottom line. And you're in a conversation with people and say, okay, what's the bottom line? What's your bottom line? And it really is a financial terminology that people are using there, because the bottom line is like after everything is all said and done, and well, what were you left over? What was left over? What was the impact of everything that you did? Bottom line. Okay. That's pretty much how we read a financial statement. What is the impact of everything that you did? After all is said and done, after the dust settles, well, what's left over at the bottom of this? Okay. This is the pointing and the direction, the focus of a financial statement, really an income statement. Okay. So what I want to understand by that is, okay, well, I went out here and we did all this stuff. Like we created all these invoices. We did all these services for these clients and customers, picked up loads, dropped them off, all these different units. We're actually out here doing it day in and day out for the entire month. Well, because we did all of this work, we actually have this outcome in terms of profits. I think we call it net profits. Okay. Now, let's talk about a little bit more down the line. So this is an example of this. Okay. So the top line of this, when we go from top to bottom, we're working our way from top to the bottom line, the top line to the bottom line. Well, what's going to be the end result at the bottom? So the top line of this gives us access to, okay, well, how much money did we bring in all together from the jobs that you took on? Now, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So, I was on a call, and some of you have seen this call that we were on with Teresa Watson when we did that interview with an expert. And she was just talking about how people get into the industry and they're really excited about making all this money, right? Oh, you can make $6,000, $7,000 a week with a truck, right? And people get excited about those numbers. And it makes sense. Well, they're not doing that with a job usually, right? And that's just considering the top line. We call it gross revenue. Okay. Now, when you go out here and you book loads, you're looking to get some certain freight rate for this, like a rate per mile that you're looking to get, which impacts your gross revenue. Okay. Now, it's fine. You want this number, like it's fantastic. We want this number to be as high as possible, this gross revenue, because this is an indicator of everything that you get to bring in. So you as a business owner, you want to drive this number up as high as possible. Yes. That's one aspect of the business. Drive it up, this number, gross revenue up as high as possible. Okay. The next aspect of that is, okay, well, I want to understand, well, what's doing that? What it is that we do in the business that drives that gross revenue up as high as possible. Well, we have a basic revenue model. So like trucking revenue, we call it line haul revenue, right? That's the main source of revenue that you can get when that is inside of what we call gross revenue, right? So revenue is income, the money that you bring in. So line haul is that main source of that income, that revenue that comes in trucking. So basically that means that you agree to pull freight from one place to another. Pick up in point A, drop off in point B, that's a line haul. That's where you make your money. All right, main source of revenue. But there are other things that you can do to drive up this revenue number inside of trucking if you are creative, okay? Now, I'm saying this because I want you to operate like a Fortune 100 company inside of this. Your job, your responsibility as an owner is to make sure this number one top line is as high as possible, whatever it takes. All right, so you may be going through the day-to-day, getting on load boards and trying to figure out, well, how you're going to make, the most you can make for this particular load plan on a load board. And if you're just thinking about it at that level, you're not thinking about it enough. Okay, that's what I want to say about that. There's other opportunities, even at that level, like in terms of load planning. Well, how can we load plan with different segments in the industry to ensure that we're getting the most revenue as possible for the least amount of effort? We're going to talk about least amount of effort and what that looks like shortly, okay? But what I want you to be left with in this part of the conversation is that as the CEO of your company, as somebody who's operating like a Fortune 100, your focus wants to be to bring in as much revenue as possible and never think that you're limited in the ways that you can do that in a trucking company. So here's an example of this. I got on a phone call with somebody yesterday, and they were just talking about, okay, well, what else can we do? We're a trucking company, and they're in the oil market, which is booming, which has been booming for the last couple of years, right? And it's a market where it's not always the case. It goes up and it goes down, right? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. And in those not so good times, well, what did they do in order to make sure that their revenue is solidified? So, we're in a fantastic conversation about what those options look like. It was like, man, well, we can get roll-offs and rent out roll-offs as another source of gross revenue, right? And I love it, man, because now he's not limited inside of his thinking. And I was like, what else can we do? Well, we have other equipment rentals. We can rent out pressure washers. We can rent out trailers. And we can do dump trucks and construction. And they have another division business unit in order to make sure that they're driving up gross revenue. Okay. Super important to be thinking this way. Now, what happens a lot of the times if we're not doing that, because guess what? When he does that, and if you do that, well, in any market, you can thrive because you're not limited. You can pivot in that. Okay. That's the main idea behind the way of thinking, that you can go out here in any market and still win in trucking because you have pivots and business units that are diversified in one business model, okay? And hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying, because you have an opportunity here to really, really solidify like this high number of growth, this high amount of gross revenue. You have an opportunity to keep going out here and developing that business to ensure that you win when it comes to driving up gross revenue. Okay. All right. So yeah, so that's trucking and line haul. That's number one. source of revenue. Then you can possibly have rental and other business units that produce revenue, gross revenue. Okay. That's top line revenue. Now, gross revenue. Now, the next thing is direct costs. This is like number two. What are the direct costs? So direct costs are costs associated with me actually performing the job. Now, if I did not perform the job, I would not have these costs. These are what direct costs are. So if I did not do the job, I would not have this cost. For example, you wouldn't have to pay drivers if you didn't drive the truck, right? It's common sense. And so that's a direct cost. Now, you wouldn't have to pay fuel if you didn't move the truck. Truck doesn't need fuel if you don't move it, direct cost, right? And now there's other things that can go along with that, like maybe like if you didn't went on a specific job, there's permits that are required. Now, if you didn't have to do this job, then you wouldn't have any permits. So that could get extensive, but I want you to get this inside of our conversation. Your financial reporting, which is the conversation that we're in financial reporting. It wants to be clean, concise, and simple. Okay, so the cleaner that we can make this, the simpler we can make this, the easier it is to read. Like, and when we read anything, or like whether it's numbers or it's in language, other language like written language, the cleaner the communication, the more easily it is understood. The cleaner the communication, the more easily it is understood. Right? I use Grammarly a lot when I'm writing to cut out all the extras so that my communication in my writing is clean and simple, so that people can understand me without confusion. Right? So the same thing wants to apply to our financial reports. So when we put our financial reporting up here, our numbers, we want to account for these things in a way where it's very simple. I have a client that we work with, and one of the things they dealt with when they came on was, it was so cumbersome in their financial reporting. They were reporting their customers as expenses. Like, so get this, right? It was all maintenance costs, but it wasn't just reported as maintenance costs. It was recorded as, okay, Joe's trailer, Joe's trailer repairs had its own expense line. And then so did Sam's trailer repairs, and so did Freightliner, and so did all these other people, right? They had their own line item on a financial report, which is ridiculous. Okay, you want to keep it simple so that you can read it simply for your understanding purposes, right? If it gets too long, gets too complicated, you're not going to read it, you're not going to understand it, and it's not going to deliver. Okay, so when we're thinking about direct costs, we want to keep that simplified as well. Okay, to understand what's really impacting directly what it is that we're doing when we produce the load. Okay, what are those costs directly associated with that? Right, the main things are going to be driver and fuel costs. Okay, if you keep that simple, you will win. And after that, we're going to have something called the gross profit or gross profit margin, which is, okay, well, after all the direct costs that we had to put in to bring in this revenue, well, what's left over? Okay, what do we really make here? Okay, so your gross profit margin, again, that wants to be as high as possible. Your gross profit and your gross profit margin, they want to be as high as possible. So you want to keep as much money and be as efficient there in terms of direct costs as possible, so you can keep most of the revenue that you bring in up top. All right, so hopefully that makes sense, guys, in terms of reading this from top to bottom. Now, the next thing is operating expenses. We call it OpEx, operating expenses. These are costs that are going to be associated with you running your trucking company that are that you pay regardless. These are outflows in your business that happen month after month, whether you those wheels on the truck move or not. All right, these are like insurance costs. These are GSA is general selling and administrative costs, like maybe you have office wages and office expenses, and maybe you have utilities. Definitely rents that you may have to pay, to house facilities, like you have to pay these rents over, like no matter what. And down the line, these are expenses that you're going to keep paying regardless of whether or not you take on loads or not. Okay, so those are operating expenses. At the end of the day, after that's all said and done, we have something called a net profit margin. Now, I said something the other day because when I was talking about this call, financial professionals, we use these terminologies, and these terminologies can be somewhat confusing when we think about it. And one of the things they talk about in the financial world when it comes to this is, that's a funny word. It's a funny word, EBITDA. EBITDA. So EBITDA is basically earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation, and amortization. All right. So I don't want you to get caught up in so much of all the terminology inside of that. But basically, it's okay, what are you making really just from the pure performance of your business? When you go out and you pull freight and you're making your money like from that top line that we just talked about all the way through to the bottom line, right? What's left over in terms of earnings? And earnings is another way to say, well, profits, net profits. All right. Before you're paying interest, like we're taking out of account whatever interest expenses that you have. We're not taking into account any depreciation, which is basically the expense of assets over time. We'll talk about that another other time. Don't get too caught up in that. And taxes, of course, before taxes are taken out, and before amortization costs, which is another form of like depreciation of assets. Okay. All right. So I don't want you to get caught up so much on the tail end of like assets and depreciation and amortization. But what I do want you to understand is earnings. Okay. How much are you making? What is all of that producing for you at the end of the day? Right. So if you're driven to, it's interesting I say driven because we're talking about trucking. So you want to be driven to understand the earnings, the bottom line of your business. Right. That's what we're here for. Okay. Now I have something that I want to share with you real quick, just to give you an idea of how it can be simply put. And one of the things I do want to say as I'm sharing this is that your systems to track like your inflows and outflows of your business, they want to be tight. So what I've seen is that a lot of businesses, they're not tight with that. They're not tight with their tracking. They're not. They're not tight with the tracking of their business, and therefore they're not getting the truth in financial reporting, which is so important, guys, to get the truth. This is one of the things that I talk about with our staff. It's like we have an obligation. This is one of our promises. Okay, the promise is to make sure that we give our clients the truth. The truth is so important to see, and I'm going to share this right now. The truth is so important to see in financial reporting. So if you don't capture that, like in every activity that you're doing, then your scope of vision is going to be skewed. And when your scope of vision is going to be skewed, it's like, man, if you're driving on a road at night and you think the road is straight because you're like maybe you're like cockeyed or something like that, you're like cross-eyed and you think the road is straight. This is why they don't let people like that drive. Right? If you're like that when you drive a car and you're going around a curve, but you think the road is straight, well, it's going to be a bad day. You're going to make some bad decisions. Okay. And so it's the same thing in your business. You want to make sure that you're seeing everything clearly and you're not seeing things skewed. Because if you're seeing things skewed, you're going to have skewed decisions, you're going to have a skewed business, and you're going to have a bad day. All right. So it's really important that you have all of your tracking processes in place, the systems in place to track everything down to a T so that you can see exactly what's happening from top to bottom in your business. Now, this is an example of what it could look like for you. Okay. Now, we're looking at this as a percentage of revenue, but look at this. These are a lot, like we talked about direct costs, the cost of goods sold we have is really what we call direct costs, right? But you have your service revenue, which is that main revenue that you bring out here, the top line. This is what we talked about. So let's say that this company started out, they did 486,000 in their first year. You do that with maybe 2 trucks, and you have your direct cost. And your direct costs could be broken up into, okay, well, you have company drivers, you have owner operators, right? So that could be your direct driver costs. Look at that, right? And then you have your direct fuel expenses. And a lot of times you can put in um, your maintenance costs because there's a factor that we put in. This is another thing that we can do with people is there's a per mileage rate that we account for. Like there's a wear and tear model that we use to account for the accrued maintenance expense. So we might not have to pay money today, but because the wheels turn on the hub, there is a cost associated with maintenance, and we actually expense that out for a lot of people here. All right, so if you can imagine if the truck is moving, when it moves, that expense is incurred. We have that expense. So that is a direct cost. If we take a look, we can account for it as a direct cost. And it gives us more of an appropriate vision on the total cost of maintenance, per direct cost on producing that load. How much does that load really cost us to do? Okay. And then equipment rental, this is something that doesn't necessarily have to be in direct costs with companies. Guys, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna wrap up. We're right at our time tonight, right? And equipment rental can be a direct cost per se if we need to rent. Like for example, there are models of businesses that we work with. They don't really have a rental cost unless they go out and rent that truck at that particular time to do the load. Okay, and that's how that could work. It's in terms of direct costs. Otherwise, this would be another operating expense. It's all like a rental operating expense. All right, and then we have all these down the line. All right, and this could be pretty extensive, guys. All right, so we have insurance, professional fees, other rents and leases, taxes, permits, and licenses, and utility costs. And then, of course, we have our administrative wages and everything else. All right, that can be down the line. And there's more stuff, guys. They're like, when we work with people in the trucking industry, these line items for operating expenses, they get pretty extensive. And you want to be able to track these to see, well, where can you pivot? Where can you adjust? So let's talk about it. I want to wrap this up powerfully with you in this conversation. And thank you for extra time, guys. The thing that we want to be left with inside of this conversation is that you can operate your company like a Fortune 100 through financial literacy. All right. Now, the one thing that you want to get inside of it was how can you, like inside of this conversation is how can I be proficient at reading the financial story? How can I be proficient at tracking that financial story so that it reads the truth in financial reporting? Okay. Now, this gives you the ability to look line per line to see what's impacting your business. Like when it comes to, am I driving revenue up as much as possible? Or am I delivering, efficient, like direct costs? Am I reducing those costs as much as possible? How can I win here? All right, this is what we want to see line by line. Now, guys, I want you to take that with you. I want you to run with that this week. Ask yourself those questions. Become the Fortune 100 leader of your organization through financial literacy. We're going to talk more about this during the week. I'll be putting posts inside of our chat. I'll be doing some more posts on Instagram to talk more about this conversation throughout the week. But guys, let's go out here, crush it through financial literacy, through running your company like a Fortune 100 organization. All right. Thank you for your time. Excited to be with you today. Talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.